Fear controls more financial decisions than intelligence ever will, especially in crypto, because crypto exposes emotions quickly. Fear during crashes, fear during uncertainty, fear of losing money, fear of making mistakes, and emotionally, most people never recover from that pressure. That is why fear keeps so many people financially stuck. Not because opportunity does not exist, but because emotionally, people become trapped inside hesitation. They wait endlessly, waiting for certainty, waiting for perfect timing, waiting for fear to disappear. But fear never disappears completely, especially when money is involved. Because money is emotional, it represents survival, security, freedom, status, and emotionally, people protect those things aggressively. That is why uncertainty feels uncomfortable financially, because uncertainty triggers fear, and fear changes behavior immediately. People stop thinking clearly, they overreact emotionally, and they begin making decisions based on short-term emotions. That is where problems begin, because emotional decisions usually create long-term consequences, especially during volatile markets. That is why many people miss opportunities repeatedly, not because they lack intelligence, but because fear controls behavior, and fear-controlled behavior creates hesitation. That hesitation becomes a financial habit over time. People delay investing, people delay learning, people delay building the future, because emotionally, they want guarantees first. But investing does not offer guarantees, especially crypto. That is why emotional control matters so much, because financially successful people usually think differently about fear. They do not eliminate fear completely. They manage it, and that changes behavior, because now, fear no longer controls every decision. That is a huge psychological shift, especially for beginners, because beginners usually believe successful investors feel no fear, but that is not true. Smart investors feel fear too. The difference is they do not let fear control behavior, and behavior creates long-term outcomes. That is why discipline matters, because discipline protects decisions during emotional moments, especially during uncertainty, because uncertainty creates emotional chaos online. Everyone panics together. Everyone reacts emotionally together. And emotionally, that pressure becomes contagious. That is why social media can become dangerous financially, because fear spreads fast, and emotional investors usually absorb that fear immediately. But disciplined investors react differently. They slow down emotionally, they think longer term, and they focus on systems instead of emotional headlines, because systems create stability, and stability reduces emotional panic. That is why education matters, because understanding reduces emotional fear, and reduced fear creates calmer decisions, especially during volatility. That is why long-term investors usually move differently emotionally. They stop reacting to every short-term movement because they understand something important. Fear is temporary, but emotional decisions can create permanent damage. That is why emotional control is one of the most valuable skills in investing, especially in crypto. Remember, please, fear is normal, but emotional decisions destroy futures. Protect your emotions and think long-term. And this is where everything changes, because once people understand fear psychologically, they stop reacting emotionally to every market movement. And that changes investing completely, because now decisions become calmer, more intentional, more disciplined, That is why emotional stability is such a powerful financial advantage, especially today, because modern media profits from emotional reactions. Fear creates clicks. Fear creates panic. Fear keeps people emotional, and emotional people make emotional financial decisions. That is why many investors constantly feel exhausted mentally, because emotionally, they never disconnect from fear. Every headline feels urgent. Every correction feels catastrophic. And emotionally, their nervous system stays trapped inside stress. That is not sustainable long-term, especially in crypto, because crypto is volatile by nature, and without emotional structure, volatility becomes psychologically overwhelming. That is why systems matter so much, because systems reduce emotional chaos. Instead of reacting emotionally, you follow a process, and processes create stability, especially during fear. That is why patient investors usually survive longer, not because they predict perfectly, but because they remain calmer emotionally, and calm behavior creates better long-term decisions. That is why emotional endurance matters more than hype, because hype disappears quickly, but discipline compounds over time. That is the real advantage, especially in crypto, because emotionally stable investors usually avoid catastrophic mistakes. They do not panic sell emotionally. They do not chase random excitement. And they do not force success impatiently, because they understand that long-term wealth requires emotional control first. That is why mindset matters, because mindset shapes behavior, and behavior shapes the future, especially financially. That is why fear management is actually a financial skill, because unmanaged fear destroys consistency, and without consistency, long-term growth becomes impossible. That is why many people quit investing too early emotionally, not because opportunity disappeared, but because fear became stronger than conviction. That is why education matters, because understanding creates confidence slowly, and confidence reduces panic, especially during uncertainty. That is why long-term investors focus heavily on learning, not emotional predictions, not hype cycles. Learning, because knowledge creates perspective, and perspective reduces fear. That is why financially strong people usually move differently emotionally. They stay calmer during panic. They think longer term during fear, and they protect capital carefully, because survival matters more than excitement, especially in crypto. Remember please, fear is temporary. Emotional mistakes can become permanent. Protect your emotions, protect your capital, and build carefully.